Every day, thousands of vans roll through the mountain passes of the Alps, along the coastal cliffs of Portugal, and down the back roads of rural Greece. Someone is living inside each one, not camping, actually living, for months, inside a space the size of a walk-in closet. You've probably seen the American version, the big builds with standing showers and full kitchens. But European van life is a completely different thing, and the reality of it never makes it onto social media. So why does a European camper van look the way it does? It comes down to geography. European cities were built centuries before cars existed. The streets in old towns across Italy, France, and Spain were designed for horse carts. Try driving a full-size American RV through a medieval village in Provence, and you won't make it past the first corner. Height-restricted underpasses are everywhere. Fuel in Europe costs roughly double what it does in the United States, and toll roads across France, Spain, and Italy can eat through a budget fast if you're driving something heavy. That's why the Fiat Ducato became the default van of European van life. It's narrow enough to fit down a one-lane road on a Greek island, tall enough to stand up in with a high roof conversion, and fuel efficient enough to cross 3 countries on a single tank of diesel. The Mercedes Sprinter and the Citroën Relay fill similar roles. These are panel vans, not motorhomes. From the outside, they look like delivery vehicles. You'd walk past one parked on a street in Barcelona and never know someone was inside making coffee. But before we get inside, there's a more immediate question. Where do you actually park this thing? And is it even legal? Because the answer changes depending on which country you happen to be in that night. Europe has no single rule for this. It varies wildly from one border to the next, and sometimes from one town to the next within the same country. In Scandinavia, there's a tradition called the right to roam, known as Allemansrätten in Sweden and Allemansrätten in Norway. The principle is simple. You can camp almost anywhere on public land for 1 or 2 nights. As long as you're not near a private home, you leave no trace, and you respect the landscape. For vanlifers, this is about as good as it gets. You can park your van by a fjord in northern Norway, next to a forest lake in Sweden, and wake up to a view that would cost €300 a night at a hotel, and it's completely legal. Move south and the picture changes fast. Spain technically prohibits wild camping in most regions, but enforcement varies enormously. In rural Andalusia, you'll find vanlifers parked along dirt roads overlooking olive groves, and nobody says a word. Drive into a coastal town on the Mediterranean during high season, and the local police might knock on your door at 2 in the morning and ask you to move. Portugal cracked down hard in the Algarve after years of overcrowding at popular surf spots. Vans parked on clifftop roads near Sagres used to be a common sight. Now fines of up to €200 are enforced, and barriers have gone up at many of the old free camping spots along the coastline. France has a different system entirely. Across the country, there are thousands of designated motorhome areas called aires. Some are free, some charge a small fee, and they range from a simple gravel lot with a water tap to full-service areas with electricity hookups and waste disposal stations. French aires became the backbone of European van life. You can cross the entire country, from the English Channel coast to the Pyrenees, sleeping at a different area every night without ever breaking a rule. And then there's the app, Park4Night. If you spend any time in the European van life community, you'll hear about it within the first 5 minutes. It's a crowdsourced database of parking spots, wild camping locations, and service points across all of Europe. Vanlifers rate locations, leave photos, warn about police activity, note whether the ground is level, whether there's cell signal, whether the road in is too rough for a low van. It's a survival tool disguised as a phone app. Experienced vanlifers plan entire routes around it. So that's the parking sorted. But what about the van itself? You open that sliding door and step inside, and what you find is surprisingly well thought out. A proper fixed bed across the back, usually around 130 centimeters wide, with a real mattress, not a fold-out bench. Underneath that bed, a deep storage garage for bikes, climbing gear, surfboards, whatever the trip demands. Along one wall, a compact kitchen with a 2-burner gas stove, a sink fed by a freshwater tank, and a small compressor fridge running off a leisure battery charged by solar panels bolted to the roof. On the opposite wall, storage shelves, A wardrobe space, maybe a fold-down table that doubles as a workspace. The ceiling has a max fan or a Fiamma vent pulling air through the van. LED strip lights run along the edges. There's usually a diesel heater mounted somewhere underneath, ducted to push warm air through the living space on cold nights. And there's one detail that tells you everything about how vanlifers treat this space. Before they park for the night, most vanlifers spend 5 or 10 minutes orienting the van. They check which direction the sunset will come from, whether the ground is level enough to sleep flat, whether the sliding door opens toward a view or toward a wall. 4 square meters of living space, but it gets set up with more thought than most people put into arranging a hotel room. It's theirs, and they make it work. Now, the part that the YouTube thumbnails and the Instagram reels always seem to skip because there's no bathroom in a van, no shower cubicle. For a person living in 4 square meters for weeks or months at a time, that creates a daily logistics challenge that most people sitting at home have never had to think about. Showers first. The most common solution is a gym membership. In countries like Spain, Portugal, and France, budget gym chains offer monthly passes for 15 to 25 euros. Vanlifers sign up, use the showers, sometimes use the gym itself, and move on. Campsite facilities are another option, especially in southern Europe where small family-run campsites charge 5 to 10 euros for a night and include hot showers. Some vanlifers install outdoor solar showers, a black bag hung on the back of the van that heats water in the sun. Works well on a warm afternoon in the south of France, less useful on a gray morning in the Scottish Highlands. But the reality is, some days you just don't shower. You're parked on a mountain pass in the Dolomites, or on a remote beach in Sardinia, or somewhere along a back road in the Balkans where the nearest town is 30 minutes away. You adapt. Some vanlifers swim in rivers and lakes across Central Europe. Others carry a pump shower fed from their freshwater tank. You figure it out or you go without. The toilet situation is similarly practical. Most well-built vans in Europe carry a cassette toilet, a small portable unit that sits inside a cupboard or under a bench. You use it, you empty it at designated disposal points found at campsites and areas, and you carry on. Some vanlifers have switched to composting toilets, which separate liquid and solid waste and require no chemicals. These have become increasingly popular because they're easier to maintain and you can empty them less frequently. And then there are the nights. You wake up at 2 in the morning. It's raining. You're parked in a gravel lot somewhere in rural Austria. The nearest public toilet is a 15-minute walk in the dark. You use the cassette toilet, close the lid, and go back to bed. Nobody puts that in the travel reel, but that's the nightly routine. So hygiene is managed, but sleeping is where van life either works or falls apart, because if you can't sleep well, nothing else matters. And European weather does not cooperate year-round. A van is a metal box. In summer, it bakes. In winter, it freezes. Solving both of those problems is what separates a weekend camper from someone who actually lives on the road full-time. In the warmer months, ventilation is everything. Roof fans pull hot air out. Side windows with mosquito screens let cooler evening air flow through. Most experienced vanlifers park in shade, orient the van so the largest window faces away from the afternoon sun, and avoid parking on tarmac, which radiates heat back up through the floor all night. Winter is the harder challenge. A good diesel heater, something like a Webasto or an Eberspacher, is considered essential for anyone spending a European winter in a van. These units burn a tiny amount of diesel from the van's fuel tank and push warm air into the cabin through ducted vents. They keep the interior at a comfortable temperature even when it's well below freezing outside, but they're not foolproof. Diesel heaters can fail. They can clog. You can run low on fuel in the middle of the night on a mountain road in the Pyrenees with no petrol station for 50 kilometers. And condensation is a constant battle. Your breath, your cooking steam, even your body heat generates moisture inside a sealed metal box. Without proper ventilation and vapor barriers, that moisture settles on the walls, the windows, the bedding. It makes everything damp. It breeds mold. Managing condensation is something van lifers talk about constantly because it never fully goes away. This is actually why a lot of experienced van lifers keep a thermal bivvy packed somewhere in the van as a backup. Something like a terrace shell, which uses a reflective lining to bounce body heat back toward you and creates a windproof, water-resistant barrier around your body. It packs down to the size of a soda can, fits in a glove box, and works without batteries or fuel. For someone sitting in a van with a dead heater at 3 in the morning somewhere in the Alps, with frost forming on the inside of the windshield, that's not a luxury. That's the backup plan. Link in the description. So you survive the night. But then comes morning, and the next challenge starts the moment you open your eyes. Food. And this is where van life in Europe has a genuine advantage over almost anywhere else. A European van lifer might be on the road for 2, 3, sometimes 6 months straight. That's hundreds of meals cooked in a space the width of your shoulders, often while standing at an angle because the van isn't perfectly level on the ground. The kitchen is not decorative. It gets used. Most setups run a 2-burner gas stove powered by a refillable LPG canister. Some van lifers add a small portable oven that sits on top of the burner for baking bread or roasting vegetables. The fridge is usually a compressor unit, about 40 to 50 liters, running off the leisure battery. It keeps food cold, but it's small, which means grocery shopping happens every 2 or 3 days. And here's the part that makes European van life different from doing this anywhere else. Local markets. Nearly every town across France, Spain, Italy, Portugal, and Greece has a weekly open-air market where you can buy fresh produce, cheese, bread, olives, and local specialties for a fraction of supermarket prices. Van lifers build their routes around market days. Tuesday in this village, Thursday in the next one. You buy what's fresh, you cook that night, and you move on. But the health picture isn't always that clean. The reality of cooking in a cramped space, with limited ingredients and irregular schedules, is that eating habits suffer. Research into people living in mobile housing has found significantly higher rates of processed food consumption and lower vegetable intake compared to fixed home populations. Van lifers are no exception. When you're tired, when the weather is bad, when the stove is giving you trouble, a bag of crisps and a can of something from a petrol station becomes dinner. It happens more often than the cooking videos suggest. So you've got the full picture now. The van, the bed, the kitchen, the showers, the parking lots, the cassette toilets emptied at motorway service stations. But there's one thing we haven't talked about yet, and it's probably the hardest part of all of this. When the sliding door closes for the night and there's nowhere left to drive, it's just you, in 4 square meters somewhere in Europe, a long way from anyone you know. A survey conducted across European van life communities found that over 30% of full-time van lifers reported regular feelings of loneliness. For solo travelers, that number climbed even higher. And it's not just the solo ones. Couples living together in a van share every single moment of every single day in a space smaller than most bathrooms. The fights are about small things, whose turn it is to empty the water tank, whether to stay an extra night or keep driving, where to park. These sound trivial, but in a van, there's nowhere to walk away to. You work it out face to face, or it falls apart. One van lifer who'd spent 3 years on the road described it as the best and worst thing that ever happened to her relationship. You find out very quickly what you can actually tolerate, she said, and what you can't. The sunsets are beautiful. The freedom is real. But so is calling your family from a petrol station car park on a Tuesday night because it's the only place with strong enough signal, and realizing you've missed another birthday, another dinner, another Sunday that everyone else spent together. If you're getting something out of this, hit subscribe. Next week, we're covering how people actually live full-time on narrow boats across the canal systems of Europe, and the numbers behind it might surprise you. And yet, talk to van lifers who've been doing this for 2, 5, even 10 years, and most of them will tell you the same thing. They wouldn't go back. It's the morning you wake up parked on a cliff overlooking the Adriatic Sea in Croatia, and there's nobody else around. It's the afternoon you spend reading a book in a meadow somewhere in the Swiss Alps with your van parked under a pine tree. It's the evening you pull into a small village in the Peloponnese, buy tomatoes and feta from a roadside stand, and cook dinner while the sun drops behind the mountains. The community matters too. Van life in Europe has created its own informal network. You see the same vans at the same spots. You share information about routes, border crossings, water fill-up points, and the mechanic in that small town in southern Spain who actually understands Fiat Ducato engines. There are van life meetups, seasonal gatherings in Morocco and Portugal where hundreds of vans park together for a week. People trade skills, share meals, fix each other's electrical systems. Nobody organizes it, nobody runs it. It just happens because people living the same life on the same roads tend to find each other. The van itself changes over time. Every van lifer will tell you that the build they started with is not the build they have now. You learn what you actually need after the first few months. The overhead shelf that seemed clever gets ripped out because you keep hitting your head. The underbed storage gets reorganized for the third time. The curtains get replaced with better blackout material because the streetlights at that parking lot in Lyon kept you awake all night. The van becomes a project that's never quite finished, and that's part of it. You're always adjusting, always improving, always making it a little more yours. And that 4 square meters starts to feel different after a while. It stops being small. It starts being enough. You know where everything is. You know how the light falls through the window at different times of day. You know which drawer rattles on bumpy roads and which corner of the bed is the warmest on a cold night. That's probably the part that's hardest to explain to someone who's never done it. It's not about the van. It's not about the sunsets or the cheap wine or the mountain roads. It's about waking up tomorrow morning, sliding that door open, making a coffee, and knowing that wherever you end up next is entirely up to you. If you live in a van anywhere in Europe, what's the one thing you wish people understood about this life? And if you've never tried it, do you think you could do it? Months on the road, 4 square meters, a different country every week. Tell me in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you got something out of this one, hit the like button. It helps more than you think, and I'll see you in the next one.